my case, we started, when was it, 2017, officially incorporated as a city flag back then. And I started with two co-founders, Beto Altamirano, our CEO, and Beto Gomez, our COO. Two Betos, very confusing. And I mean, we all had our different experiences that led us to get together and start City Flag back then. I mean, for Beto A, he was organizing communities politically in East Austin. So, I mean, he got to experience what people really cared about, right? Beto Gomez was doing his PhD, and he was overseas researching how people back then, this was like probably 12, 15 years ago, using social media, Twitter, to engage with big movements like the Arab Spring or Occupy Wall Street or things like that. And in my case, I was more on the process improvement part of things, working as a management consultant, doing software selection and implementation for governments in Mexico, which was very interesting. And we got together and trying to figure out how to connect people and government using technology, right? And putting together all of these experiences, we want to make an easy to use tool for the community, an app that's not that transactional, that actually closes that engagement loop of communication, where people can report non-emergency issues like potholes, vandalism, stray dogs, things like that, and actually get a response from the city, right? So we launched in multiple cities. One of our clients is San Antonio, and for example, here we have close to 80,000 users that have reported probably close to 300,000 service requests. And just to put that into perspective, I mean, that's millions of dollars of taxpayer money that are actually addressing things and issues that people really care about, right? Because they reported them. So it's been a success case. We've shifted now. We're Irys, new clients, new focus, as I mentioned in the beginning. But we still hold those clients, and we learned a lot through that experience.
Eduardo, I want to dig in a little bit on, I guess you would call it a pivot, because you took City Flag and sort of pivoted it from selling to governments, or solely selling to governments, to broadening your sort of customer base to the private sector. Can you tell us a little bit about like why you did that and what you learn about it?
Definitely, and I'm still not used to the word pivot because it was hard, you know, to accept that it was actually a pivot, and it was. So we pivoted a few months ago, actually, and it was after our experience in an accelerator. So we did Techstars. Techstars is a major technology accelerator. And the corporate partner for this specific accelerator was Arcadis. Arcadis is a major engineering firm based in the Netherlands, publicly traded company. And after talking to literally hundreds of mentors and people from that specific industry, we learned that our technology could be used beyond just city governments, right? So fast forward a little bit, and we were able to secure, with the same business model that we have, a seed round. And then 2020, the pandemic hits, right? And everything changes. So city governments are not spending money in technology anymore. And we realize that companies like Arcadis still are contractually obligated to engage with the community because they're building bridges, they're building highways, they're building airports and things like this. And they used to do all of their civic engagement activities in person through town hall type of events, right? So they're in big need of something where they can engage with the community virtually. So they reach out to us. They're also investors in Irys. And they're like, you know what, we need this type of tool. And we're like, let's do it. I mean, we're not selling. We need to do something. We have money because we just closed our seed round. We're like, okay, we'll do a tool. We'll pilot it with one of your clients. We'll launch and then just test how it works. Now today, we're serving multiple clients from similar to Arcadis, and in that specific use case, right? How can we help them capture that data from the public so that they can build more people-centric or more resilient infrastructure that are actually based on the needs of the neighborhoods and the people that live in that area?
Thank you. Val, I want to hop back to you because, like, as you mentioned, radical registrars emerged from like the early days of San Antonio's Black Lives Matter protest in the summer of 2020. And for the audience that doesn't know, like, Texas makes voter registration extremely difficult. Like, we're notorious across the nation for having one of the most burdensome voter registration systems. One that there's no like widespread online voter registration. So it's like easier for like folks like me and Val to get on a plane, fly to Denver, get off the plane and start registering voters in Denver in a brand new state than it is to go like one county over and register voters there. So you've done a tremendous amount of work with like a clipboard and a pen. You've registered nearly 1,500 people in the last year alone right here in San Antonio. Can you tell us a little bit about like doing this face-to-face work, you know, at a very early stage, but also in the middle of a global pandemic? What did you like learn from that?
A lot, because it was all I knew. So I came from a sales background when 2020 started. I was starting a new job, making the highest salary I'd ever made. We had 8 weeks of back and forth training that ended right at the end of February. And then 2 weeks into March was a shutdown. And because I wasn't able to sell payroll to companies during the beginning of a global pandemic, I was let go of pretty quickly. And so, I got a little off track. What was the question again? What was the root of that?
What did you learn from like doing
What did I
this?
learn? Right. So, yeah, so it was just a whole new world to me. Like, everything about it was pretty new, with everything with the voter registration and all that. So, you know, one, taking care of, you know, like myself and our volunteers and making sure, you know, the community was super helpful in getting us like PPE early on and us just making sure that we were taking care of each other health-wise. Like, I'm very glad and proud to say that like none of us ever caught COVID while we were out doing voter registration. So just doing those things by keeping ourselves and everybody else safe that we were coming into contact with. So learning that pretty quickly and just learning voter registration is like a kind of unforgiving industry because, you know, it's human to human and humans are not perfect. And, you know, on the voter registration card, it says county on there. Some people see that as country. And so, you know, like catching those small things when you don't even know what you're supposed to catch. And then just the ease of which that you can be stripped of your deputization. I tell people that I'm newly deputizing that voter suppression truly does start with us. And it's so very easy for us to get our deputization taken from us, and it just makes it even that much more difficult. So you have to learn fast, especially with voter registration, if you want to keep doing it. So learning as you go, not repeating those past mistakes, you know, making sure that everybody's taking care of each other and healthy is definitely some of the things I learned very early on.
Thank you. Ananda, Act for SA is only a few months old, right? You founded it 60 days ago?
Yes.
But it's an organization that emerged from a much larger movement, which was, you know, the Prop B movement that was led by Fix SAPD for police accountability here in the city. And in that election this past May of this year, you know, more people voted for, or you know, like in that Prop B question than did for the mayor. So there were people that went to the ballot box, voted, you know, on Prop B, and then rolled off, didn't vote for the mayor or their city council person. So tell us a little bit about like what motivated you to like take the momentum of that movement in San Antonio and then move it into like this next phase of growth through Act for SA.
Absolutely. You know, I think right there is the narrative. The fact that more folks voted for Prop B than in the mayoral race meant that this was important to the community, that this was something that absolutely not only engaged them, but mobilized them. And that this was an energy that we couldn't let go. We needed to harness this to continue this work and continue this fighting for change that the community so desperately needed. And, you know, as we're going through the Prop B campaign, there were folks reaching out asking us what we were going to work on next. Are we going to focus on the body camera footage release? How about a mental health crisis response program here, getting a pilot program, going after Chapter 143? How do we make it easier to view officer disciplinary records and arbitrations? San Antonio has the worst ranked civilian oversight system in Texas out of the 5 major cities. What do we do to change this? And, you know, I learned a lot on the Prop B campaign working for Fix SAPD, but they wanted to stay laser beam focused, as some organizations do, perfectly fine, on removing chapters 143 and 174, getting a better contract. And myself and other leaders from the Prop B movement wanted to continue that and continue building the base and continue educating folks so we can win this next time we run these ballot initiatives, because we will. But also, you know, work on all these other important areas, issue areas within police reform and police accountability. And so we formed Act for SA as a way to continue building our base, to continue engaging folks, to continue educating them and representing them, you know, at city council, in community meetings, wherever we needed to be, because this is an important issue for the community, especially our Black and Latino communities, LGBTQ plus communities, right? Folks that are in communities that are over-policed, that aren't seeing enough representation, that aren't having enough folks advocate for them. So that's what started Act for SA. We've already been working really hard on getting an alternative responder model for our mental health crisis pilot program that's been proposed by the city. Currently, they have a co-responder model that still heavily involves police. While it hasn't been SAPD, Bexar County Sheriff's Office has killed 2 people in the last year on mental health crisis call. That's a trend that we see across many police departments everywhere, so this is really important. We're continuing to monitor contract negotiations and start working with the city on how to get stronger civilian oversight, because that's what we're hearing from the community that they need.
Thank you. So this question is for all 3 of you, so we'll start at that end and work the way down with you, Eduardo. But according to research that's done by Forbes and other business schools, early stage social organizations often fell because of 3 reasons: lack of funding, which makes sense to us, founder and team like mistakes or just coincidences that come up, that's common in the private sector as well, and then like flawed program design or lack of financial operations and structure. So I guess the question for the panel here is, what were some of your biggest challenges, like, you know, when you were small or still in the growing stage? Like what are some of the things you're facing or you did face?
So many. So many challenges. I think one of the biggest ones, at least that I felt a little bit more, and I don't want to take full credit for it because it was funding, right? Fundraising for a company that that is in a very unsexy industry, right? I mean, because we're competing. It's 3 Latino founders competing against major fintech companies, right? Which is very sexy, very profitable, so investors obviously look for that. And here comes a company in San Antonio with 3 Latino founders and in the GovTech industry, right? So that was very difficult, and it was difficult to not be discouraged, right? Because you're pitching to hundreds of investors, and most of them, I mean, 99.9% of them say no. And it's literally hundreds of them, right? The more, I mean, the more no's you get, the more you have to keep pitching, right? To sustain the operations and keep the vision that you have alive. So you have, I mean, we learned to be very pragmatic, to not take things personally, and keep trying, keep looking. And I mean, today we're lucky to have amazing investors, an amazing team that we've been able to grow, and keep pushing for that vision that we have as a team, and that mission, which is to improve the quality of life in communities through the use of technology, right? And that's always been our mission since City Flag, today with Irys. I mean, we've stayed true to our values, true to our mission, and true to our vision. The things in the middle change, but we have that North Star pretty clear. And I feel like that's what really helped us through those challenges. That for me was fundraising, and of course was a major team effort, right?
I can go next. Fundraising. Funding is so crucial when you're starting up. I mean, something as simple as a few $1,000s is the difference between us working as volunteers or being able to actually be paid for our work. You know, honestly, a good example with the Prop B campaign is we lost by a mere 3,500 votes, less than 2.5%, or about 2.5% against one of the most politically entrenched, funded, oiled machines here in San Antonio. And we weren't able to hit all of our targets in our field program literally because of funding. If we would have received some funding even a few weeks earlier, or had just X amount more dollars, that was that many more paid canvassers, that was that many more signs we could put out, that many phone calls, right? Every dollar matters, and especially as a startup organization now, I mean, that's the difference between having paid staff and not. Being able to have markers and poster boards or an office. Good internet, right? A hotspot, things like this. Fundraising is so huge, and I think a lot of times this donor space and fundraising space can be hard because as an organization that is only a couple months old, you know, some of these grant applications or these donors are asking for your full 3-year plan, your 5-year plan. Well, I'm still working on that. I'm still working on making it past my first 6 months. And a little bit of faith and understanding of how this work can be so impactful if we can just start off strong is absolutely everything. But resources do not just come in funding either. It's folks getting engaged and involved, whether it's volunteers, whether it's folks donating awesome tech, right? And things. It can be a tough landscape, but it's absolutely doable if folks just are willing to engage and have some faith and understand that it starts small here, but it ends up being so big and impactful 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. You know, so I think that's one of the biggest things that I see as a startup and difficulties is navigating the fundraising landscape, the resources landscape, the strategizing, the building partners, coalitions. That's what the success of this work is based on.
Yeah, I'm going to have to echo that as well. It's definitely the lack of funding because, yes, a clipboard and pens, but it's like when we first started, we were using the back of like protest signs as clipboards for people to get registered to vote on. So just getting the funding to get actual clipboards and then pens and then highlighters and then getting the funding and the ability to get, you know, tablecloths and see that there is going to be some longevity to it. It just really means so much. And then definitely people as well, getting some reliable, you know, people to help you out and just all of the unknown, everything that I don't know and all these, you know, the things I don't know, trying to figure those things out and you know, not repeat those mistakes and grow and figure it all out by yourself.
Yeah, if I can add on to that, I think that's a huge piece right there. We are still always learning and growing as new leaders. So I think you had mentioned long-term strategy, short-term strategy. That mentorship and coaching is still just so important to us. And we are all going to make mistakes along the way, but that doesn't mean that we won't be successful in the long run or that that's not a resource or something that we need as well. Help us to strategize to make the best campaign plans we can.
I want to dig a little deeper into that topic because, like, you know, philanthropy is really white, you know, and I'm sure that the investor space is overly white as well. So can you talk a little bit about like being a leader of color in this space, and like what you need from philanthropy, what you need from investors, what you need from partners, to be able to put your, you know, like ideas and organization and what you're building front and center?
I can start. Yeah, so I mean, at least the VC space, venture capital, is very white, and the money usually stays within, or also the startup world, right? Startup founders tend to be very white as well, so most of the money stays there. Fortunately, these past few months, past few years, I mean, we've seen an increase in venture capital to Black and Latino-owned companies, which is great, but not enough, right? It's not representative. And I think, number one, we need more entrepreneurs. I mean, more people willing to take the step and be like, you know what? I like both of you, right? I see this problem. I don't have a solution yet, but I'm gonna find it and we're gonna solve it, right? And then there's a lot of money too. A lot of money, and people willing to give that money. At least in the startup world, I mean, that money sometimes just stays in real estate or in things like that. So investors also need to take that risk, right? And be like, you know what? I believe in that solution, or I believe in that cause, and I want to put my money into it, right? And I want to take that risk the same way these entrepreneurs are taking that risk. So it's just a matter of us, I mean, keep pushing, keep supporting each other, keep supporting the community. I mean, being open to mentorships, participating in these type of events, and keep raising our voice for what we believe in, and I believe that people will follow.
Absolutely. You know, I totally agree. I think lately in the past few years for venture capital, it's been opening up to our BIPOC communities. But the donor space is not just primarily white, it's also very male. So as a Black woman looking to fundraise in this space, there aren't a lot of opportunities, and I think there should be more. And either organizations or donors that do focus on Black-led movement, right? And startups, it's the same funders, the same donors every time. So it's very, very small pool to pull from that everybody else is trying to contact for their own ventures as well. And I absolutely think that donors need to be bold. If you believe in this change, if you believe that something needs to change, and maybe it's not so, like, you don't have all the answers, it's not completely clear, but you know that we're gonna work our hardest to get that change. And if you know that we need to be the ones representing our communities and working in our communities because we can do it best, then invest. Help us do this. You may not be able to be the one knocking on doors or implementing this tech, or to be speaking to city council or canvassing, but we are, and you can still support our work, not by being on the ground, but by helping fund our work. Because we're not just doing the work here, we're building other leaders, we're engaging other folks. We are creating the next Valerie's and Eduardo's and Drew's literally by a conversation. If somebody had never had a conversation with me about what grassroots organizing was, and I had just said, hey, come to this meeting, I would not be here right now. And that's the exact impact and outreach that you can have by donating to these spaces and being bold with your dollar.
Yeah, I definitely, I kind of tested it out last year, fundraising from people that I knew, and my husband happens to be white, and so when my mother-in-law would see me on the news or tell me that her friend saw me on the news or something, I was like, oh, is Miss Peggy proud of me? Hey, Miss Peggy, we could use $100 for some t-shirts, and kind of testing it out like that, and you know, seeing the return of actually like some money coming in. So I've always believed in that closed mouths don't get fed type of attitude, you know, ask and you shall receive. But also, I haven't really had many big asks yet, but you kind of just hope that your funders will have the same hope that you do. Like, And especially as people of color, like we have to have a certain amount of hope to like get us through most days. And then
Preach.
and then like especially like 2020 when like everything was like, oh my God, well 2016 it was like, oh my God, like, oh my God. So we have to keep this hope, you know, to really get us through days and especially those tough times. So we just really need these funders to have that same hope. And like, yeah, we're small, but everybody had to start somewhere. And if we had silver spoons and rich daddies and all that, we wouldn't be over here asking you.
So one of the things, like staying in the fundraising realm for a second, in the for-profit space, you have like a product that you can go sell and develop and sell. But in the nonprofit space, you're really, in a lot of ways, when you meet with donors, you meet with the community, you're selling a vision or a dream of like what you want to create or what y'all can create together. And in the very early stages of social ventures and social organizations, that comes through like bootstrapping in a lot of ways. When you don't have a lot of resources and essentially you're either like self-funding it, you're putting the sweat equity in, and that kind of thing. And I tell executive directors that I coach that they should be spending 60 to 70% of their time on building relationships with donors and fundraising to help grow the organization. So I guess my question is, you're in the early stages of your organizations, Ananda and Val, like what have you learned, in this stage where you don't have a lot of resources, but you're still doing the work every single week. Like how have you had to be resourceful, and how do you see yourself pushing past that too?
Absolutely. Those relationships are everything, and not just with donors, but the partnerships that I have with other community organizations, other organizers, activists here, I've absolutely had to rely on to help do that work, because I am one person, but we are a community, and so all of us putting in together has really helped to be able to have the reach and impact that we are looking to have. Completely. And then I'm honestly still learning a lot about self-care. I have learned more about that in the past 6 weeks than I have before, because it is a lot on your shoulders. You absolutely want to be successful, and you absolutely know how many people this can impact positively, and you don't want to fail. But I think relationships with the community, whether it's organizations, whether it's donors, whether it's activists, your volunteers, is absolutely the way that we're able to get the work done. And that's at the heart of community organizing and grassroots organizing, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, this past spring I was helping out with the Fix SAPD campaign, and that was my job. Like I was getting paid from that, and so being resourceful, just reaching out to people. Like I said, closed mouths don't get fed. Just trying, reaching out, just asking, doing the ask and seeing what you get from it, and just, like Ananda said, relying on community. Like I was, helping out helping out Fix SAPD, doing that work, which allowed me to have a job and some income coming in, and the ability to still out here talking to people, getting people registered to vote, because you couldn't sign a petition if you weren't registered to vote. And then my aunt gave me some money to do something cute for myself, and I was like, I'm gonna get my notary with this, so just like always, just trying to put it back and give back. But yeah, like Ananda touched on, self-care and all this is just of the utmost importance, because especially when you're relying on community for like almost everything, like the donors and then the volunteers and then, the friendship and camaraderie and everything else, it starts to feel, kind of lonely. And then, we're in Texas and the leaders that we have of it all, so it's, but yeah, fundraising, extremely important, self-care, right up there as well.
Eduardo, I have a question for you. So you have helped Irys scale now. We were just talking before we hopped up on stage that you're going to be in Glasgow in the next couple of weeks, and I'm highly jealous of that. So what is it like? How has it been to see this San Antonio-based technology company go from being in San Antonio and like doing some work in Mexico to then being in Boston, and I think y'all are on the West Coast as well, and then now in like Amsterdam and Scotland and everywhere else.
I mean, it's awesome, to be honest. I was, Beto Altamirano recently, he shared an essay that he was writing for college, right? He's going to, he's doing his MPA in Harvard right now. And I mean, it was awesome because he was writing about our experience of working with the city of San Antonio when we first launched the 311 SA app. And reading through that, and it was like how we overcame so many challenges. It was the first startup that started working with the city government and building a technology solution. And you forget about all those challenges, right? And so I mean, just reading through that, I thought it was awesome, and just looking back, how much we've grown personally and how much we've grown as a company and as a team, right? I mean, how we have new team members. Some of the team members that we had at the beginning are gone, and they've grown also, but some have stayed, and they've grown with us. And I mean, I think it's just a matter of absorbing that and reminding yourself, right? And sometimes you're going 1,000 miles per hour, not looking back. And I think it's important to sometimes just stop and enjoy the moment, even though you're going through so many challenges, right? Because it goes by super fast, and we don't know where we're going to be in 1, 2, 3, or 5 years. So yeah, enjoy the journey, right? It's just us putting a little bit of effort into it and putting our grain of salt. And yeah, I mean, it's been great. It's been a great journey, to be honest. A lot of problems, a lot of good highs and lows, mostly highs, because we forget about. It's like I don't know if this is the best analogy, but it's like getting people that get drunk every weekend, right? Like in college, you get drunk every weekend because you don't forget that you felt really bad the day after you got super drunk, right? I mean, you don't forget about the bads, you just forget about the good stuff. So yeah, it's been a good journey.
That sounds a lot, that scaling part of it sounds a lot like sort of campaign life too. And the big push towards election day and that kind of thing. Can y'all talk a little bit about like the push towards getting people out for the city election and, you know, like what those last couple weeks, you know, like really entail for organizers on the ground like yourselves?
The first answer is lots of coffee and no sleep, but right. Campaign cycle and working through campaigns is interesting because it's just highs and lows. It's a bunch of hills. So for 3 months, you are ramping up and you're getting busier and busier and busier. And these last 2 weeks, it's kind of hard looking back because it all flies by, but you just know that you were exhausted the whole time and yet so excited you couldn't stop. And then everything slows down. And you don't know how to slow down for a little while. And, you know, I honestly love campaign work. I love electoral work. I love engaging the community. It's all the folks I meet. It's all the friendships that I make for a lifetime. It's everything that I learn along the way about my community. It's so busy, but so enriching and rewarding. And then it slows down for a little bit, and you finally get to slowing down and accepting things that they're slow, and then the next election happens, and it starts all over again. But that's why I'm really excited, honestly, for Act for SA. We're doing year-round base building, organizing, grassroots action, and that'll be my first time really sticking with this. Not that there won't be high and low moments. Obviously, we're going to be going after these ballot initiatives again. 2023 is the legislative session, but I'm really excited to keep the community engaged year-round and continue to build this base so we can hit the legislative session and these ballot initiatives even harder when we're ready.
Yeah, campaigns are exhausting, but especially I feel like in my role of kind of that added pressure in, you know, the get out the vote efforts. Because yes, you go and get all these people registered to vote, and now you need to literally get them out of their houses and going out to vote. So it was like literally just going to complexes and knocking on every single door, going up flights of stairs, starting at the 3rd floor and just working my way down, hitting every single door, you know, going the wrong way through a gate to get in, getting flagged down really quick, paying them off with a little t-shirt and swag, you know, so so it really is never a dull moment during that campaign time. But there definitely, for me especially, was this added pressure to like win. Like Ananda and I are athletes and we want to win, and you know, getting close to winning was very good. This was a satisfying almost, because we know that, you know, that we're able to really commit ourselves to these causes like full time, that, you know, we'll be able to get these wins that we were so close to getting the last time, and making sure that you know, changing up our strategies, having real solid strategies actually, and all that. So campaigning's exhausting, but winning is everything.
Eduardo, that reminds me of a moment, I guess it was in 2020, when, you know, there was the big sort of like, you know, we were in the very first day or so of early voting, and you know, there were lines everywhere all across Bexar County. And there was no real way to know like where there were polling places that didn't have lines, or the ones that had a 2-hour wait, and which is voter suppression, by the way. So, you know, like, so I remember talking to Beto and you and the other Beto, and was like, hey, you know, it would be really cool if we had like this app where you could see the, you know, like you could crowdsource the lines and everything. And, you know, y'all essentially said, okay, yeah, we'll build it in a couple days. And like by the beginning of the second week of early voting, y'all had like an up and running, you know, app built by City Flag to monitor polling locations where people could see it, and everything. Can you tell us that like sort of like a little bit about that moment, and like what it was like to like throw that together in a matter of days, essentially?
Definitely. So yeah, I remember exactly. You reached out, and some other people involved with Move reached out, and we're like, okay, so who do we know that could potentially help us do this, right? Because lines were crazy in early voting. And I think it was Mario Bravo, right, that reached out, and he's like, I know the Irys guys, they might be able to help. He sent an email, and we're like, okay, I'll get back to you. Let me check with the team. We checked with the team, and they're like, yeah, I think we can put a quick web app together in a couple of days. And it was just a matter of shifting resources and being like, okay, we got to do this. It's like our good cause for the year, right? And yeah, we just got the whole team together, everyone involved, and just put it together with Move. I mean, the Move team did an amazing job also in providing all the polling locations, everything. And it was a simple app where as soon as you got into the line, you would check in like, hey, I'm in line. And as soon as you left the voting line, you're like, okay, I just left. And then we would aggregate that data and showcase it in the map like a stoplight. Green, it's a very light line, and yellow, it's a 15-minute wait, and red, it was like a 2-hour wait or something like that. And we got a lot of press for it, which was awesome, and a lot of people used it. And then we actually turned that for COVID testing. So COVID testing lines were also pretty busy, and we were able to just copy and paste that same app for the city. We partnered with a couple of council offices, and then they implemented that at some of the community testing they had for COVID. So we still have that tool. So for next elections, we want to keep using it. Hopefully, voter suppression is not as high as it was this past election, Drew, so we won't have to use it. That's the goal. But if we ever do have to use it, it's there. So, and if you need it, I mean, we're happy to support you with your efforts as well with that type of technology.
Well, shout out to then board member, now councilman Mario Bravo, and all of the Move organizers like Dylan and so many others that
Definitely
supplied all that information to y'all. Because They were the ones that made it happen at the last minute. So we're about to open it up for questions from the audience. But before we jump into that, my last question before we turn it over to them is, y'all are essentially like technologists and organizers that because of this thing you're building, you're being asked to be like sort of business people now, right? Tell us about like that journey, like how you've gone from like, you still register voters, but you also are in charge of payroll and the financial accounting and building a board and all of those things. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so for me, like in the industries that I came from, I had a horrible experience for this company here in San Antonio where I was constantly told that I was unprofessional and just made to feel just like I wasn't good at my job, even though I really was. And so now to be in this role, in this position, it's a lot of, I put a lot of pressure on myself, to be, the leader that I wasn't able to be in corporate America and really, be an example of a Black woman who's, reasonable, understanding, doesn't fly off the handle, not fit into any of those stereotypes. So not having any real like managerial training or whatever, it is a little nerve-wracking. And then, somebody told me one time that I was too pretty to do math, and I kind of stuck with it. And so now to like be in charge of the books of it was nice. I thought it was nice. But don't be concerned. I'm just your treasurer. No concerns. But yeah. So just being in this role now, where it's become this bigger thing. There's a lot of pressure, but it's I do feel like I'm in the best place in my life to be able to handle this sort of thing and to be able to pivot into this role as executive director and leader and co-founder and all that, and be able to do everything that it entails. But it's been quite the journey since last year, and I did not think when I went out to a protest, because I just felt so led to, that it would have became all of this. So it's just continuing to protect it and keep it safe and nurture it and let it grow, and then keep myself together so I can be the best version of me for Radical Registrars and this future generation.
First off, it has made me incredibly in awe of all executive directors and leaders for nonprofits and orgs to understand, right? I've always been on the side of the organizer or on the field. And so to step into this role has made me greatly appreciate all the moving pieces that work behind here. And it's still a large learning curve, but it's really neat to see how this all ties together with, the payroll, the strategy, building out this budget, the fundraising. It is a lot of work, but it turns into hopefully a well-oiled machine that's doing the work. There's no way to scale without this type of backbone, this infrastructure. And I am learning a lot more about organizational skills, and shout out to Bridge Movements, because they are helping me with that and helping us grow and offering great mentorship. But it has been a transition. I would rather be out knocking doors any day or protesting on the streets with a sign, but I do recognize the importance of answering massive emails and Zoom call after Zoom call as well, because I know this is adding that backdoor infrastructure that I need for not just myself, but my future organizers to do the work that they need to do without having to worry about everything that's office backdoor stuff. So a lot of appreciation.
In my case, I started my first company, and I've always been very business oriented, but very hands-on, right? And the first company I had was, I started in college, and we put 5K runs. And we started I'm a runner, I love running, everything physical activity, so I'm very competitive as well. And everything that we used to do was, or the business model that we started was, we'd approach nonprofits and be like, hey, we'll put together your 5K run, and we'll take a percentage of the profits, right? And it was successful. I'm not involved anymore, but they're still putting a lot of runs together, which is awesome. They actually have a taco run this weekend, so make sure you sign up for it. And it was very community focused, right? Because they're held in the south side. I mean, they're trying to engage a community that's not very physically active, and they're pretty disenfranchised from mental health, physical health, and all of that, right? So I was very involved with that. That's still one of my passions. And today, I mean, of course, I've been able to apply a lot of the learnings from starting up that company. And I feel like and Beto Gomez says it very well, one of the biggest challenges has been shifting from being hands-on to becoming an executive, right? And delegating most of the work that you do and trying to manage that work that you do. So I feel like that's the hardest shift, and it's what's getting used to it, right? Because you're used to doing everything and just going all in. And in a small organization, you wear so many hats. I mean, you're the lawyer, the accountant, the salesperson, the fundraiser, and everything. So it's just learn to focus more on what you're good at and become better at that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, that's our questions. Any questions from the audience or any questions from online?
A lot longer than I thought it would be. So we did have a question online. So somebody was asking a little bit about what does that kind of volunteer to team member pipeline look like? Is that a great place to get people from teams, like to join your team from your volunteer ranks? And how do you go about pushing the message, getting people involved and engaged?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, well, at least I can speak for me and a lot of folks I know, we all started as volunteers. And I mean, everything you do, like the more events you're involved in or organizing, you're learning skills along the way. You're learning strategy that take you to that next level, you know, to become, you know, our next organizer, our next employee, to become the next policy director, to become the next executive director. I mean, I can think of a story. I worked the 2016 Bernie campaign here in San Antonio, and Colt, who's like one of my closest friends here now, he literally was a volunteer that walked in through the door and never really left. We kind of lived at the office together for the next few months. He'd never done any sort of political organizing, any volunteer work in the sector at all, and he was just so passionate and wanted to learn more that, you know, I kept giving him more things to learn. Here's the next step up. Suddenly you're training volunteers and you're recruiting them. Now you're running your own canvases. He ended up running a congressional race as well as a city council race here successfully, and he is now leading the Bear Blue Action Dems as their Texas state director. So in the course of 5 years, went from having no knowledge of probably even who a city council member was or anything like that to now running a statewide organization for their field work. So it's absolutely possible. And it starts with a simple conversation and one small action like signing a petition or coming to see me at my office or an event.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think, you know, volunteering, if you're willing to give your time freely, that means it's something that you're passionate about and behind. So if it becomes a money-making opportunity, then why not? You know, you do kind of have to take that leap of faith, you know, like, but do it for yourself too. Like if it's something that you're that passionate about, like I said, you know, I went out because I was drawn to, you know, to that protest, and now it's become, you know, this whole thing. So I really am a strong believer in just following your passion and figuring out what that is and then letting that lead the way. And if it starts with volunteering, then absolutely the volunteer to, you know, team pipeline, I think that's exactly where to begin.
I couldn't have said it better. I mean, I think they covered it 100%. Yeah.
Great.
Retweet to both.
That's why we pay them the big bucks, right? So,
Exactly.
So we're at time, so we're going to round it out. Thank you all again for having us. But I want to go down the line and give you like sort of last comment. 2 questions. advice for your younger, like organizer, technologist self, and tell us how to follow you, how to volunteer, and how to donate.
Sure. I'll start. Advice that I could give is to be brave, to be passionate, and to listen to your other community members. I know sometimes it's not the easiest thing to put yourself out there to knock on a door or call somebody or text somebody, but it starts with just a few of us and it turns into 20,000 of us, turns into 150,000 of us voting in a municipal race. So be brave and put yourself out there and get involved, because we can't do this alone. Change never happens with one person. It takes a community. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at ACT4, the number 4, SATX. And then our website is www.act4sa.org. And I hope to see you all there at our events and getting involved, and I really appreciate this time and opportunity to speak to everyone.
Advice to my younger self would be to start your healing journey sooner. I'm definitely a believer in that everything's happened for a reason, especially with everything that's happened that led me here. I feel like every no I've ever gotten has led me to this most big and necessary yes, So definitely starting your self-care journey sooner. If you're not in therapy, you should be. If you don't think you need it, you do. Definitely that. But yeah, we are Radical_Registrars SATX on Instagram, or Radical Registrars SATX on Facebook. You can donate to our Cash App, which is Radical Registrars SATX. Find us, it's that, I'm sure. But yes, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you all. DM us if you have any questions on how to get involved. I can help get you deputized if you want to get your community registered to vote, but please reach out. I will definitely respond.
On my end, advice I would give my younger self would be, going back to what I was saying earlier, I think, just stop and reflect, stop and enjoy, and also don't be afraid to ask. Ask for help, ask for money, ask for whatever you need. Don't be afraid, just go out and ask for it. Somebody will say yes, just keep asking. And then to find me, personally, it's eBravo on most of my handles, Instagram, Twitter, all of that. And then Irys, it's IRYS, and our website is Hey Irys, and that's also our handle in most social media.
Well, thank you all so much. Eduardo Bravo from Irys, Ananda Tomas from Act4SA, and Val Reifert from Radical Registrars. Thank you to San Antonio Startup Week for hosting us, and thank you to this amazing audience for
Thank you, Drew,
having us today.
from Bridge.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.